A little scratchy this evening as far as my voice, so bear with me. But in a nutshell, I want to give a shout out to Immaculate Vassal 8138. He left a comment saying Hispanics are not white people. They're Indians, African, and Spain. He probably meant to say Spanish. So let's go on ahead and just get into it. First, I'm going to replay a video that I did literally a couple months back touching on this exact thing. It's called The Origin of Spain and Hispanics. Quick little minute, so bear with us. Bear with me. Did you know that one ancient king helped unite Spain before it was even called Spain? In 643 AD, Visigoth king Chinda Suinth, I wanted to make sure I got that name right, he dropped a game changer. He had created or had his people write the laws of the Visigoth. And these laws, instead of half of them being Romani and the other half being Gothi, basically half Germanic tribes, or specifically the Goths or the Visigoth tribe, and the other half of the people at the time, which were Romans that were in his kingdom, he decided that's dead. Going forward, all of you will be known as Hispani. So now, legally, everyone in his kingdom were known as Hispani. Over time, that became Hispanics. So that's that, right? And you can still take my word for it, but we're gonna jump to another source real quick. So now we're gonna go to etymology online. I don't know why my voice is, but basically, Hispanic pertaining to Spain from Latin Hispanicus, Iberian Peninsula, Hispania. That's what that region was called. So we're gonna go back through the other definition, even from as far back as the 1200s. Spain, in reference to the ancient region comprising the Great Peninsula of southwestern Europe, from Anglo French España or Spain, from Latin Hispania. So the key things we got to keep in mind is the Great Peninsula or the Iberian Peninsula in Latin and Hispania. So now we're going to slide over to this, the etymology dictionary. So a regular dictionary tells you what a word means. The etymology dictionary tells you the origins of the word and where it came from. So Latin, from Latin, Latinus, Latin, Roman, and Latin literally belonging to Latium, the region of Italy around Rome, a name of uncertain origin. So, in a nutshell, this word is tied to the Romans. So, by the time of the 1550s, it's used as a designation for people whose languages descend from Latin. Let that sink in. It's not a race. They're telling you word for word. At the time of 1550s, it simply means a person whose language descends from Latin. And then it even gives you a bonus fact. The surname Latimer literally means interpreter, a speaker of Latin. So pretty much the ancient Romans, the ancient Greeks spoke Latin, a language. All right. So now, for some of y'all who are eager to learn, we're going to go into this next one, with some enthusiasm. For those who have a locked in mindset and think a certain way and don't want no new information coming in, you're going to get a little tight. But let's go in to do it anyway. Let me see. Same thing. They give you all this other. All right, so let me get rid of that. And we just jump straight to Encyclopedia Britannica, also known as Britannica.com. The Visigothic Kingdom in Spain history. So you hear talk of the Hispano-Roman population, Visigoths, the peninsula, the Iberian Peninsula, which is pretty much modern day Spain and Portugal. You had various white tribes at war, most likely with the ancient ancestors that was already in that area running shit. And pretty much once they got a foothold in that region, then they, put their stake down, they claim. So, and these same Visigoths, Vandals, Ostrogoths, and Alans all passed through Southwest Europe, aka the Iberian Peninsula, and would go on to invade and conquer different countries along the North African coast as well, just for some bonus info. But we're going to jump off out of there. And now we're going to jump into a UCLA study website within the UCLA, website here, and it's written by for Latino people. Cecilia Nunez, forgive me if my voice is kind of messed up, but Cecilia Nunez, Julia Silva, Misael Galdamez, and Nancy Lopez. It clearly is titled Latino is not a race. So to say it from their mouth, to say it from the dictionary's mouth, to say it from Encyclopedia Britannica's mouth, to say it from the etymology dictionary, Latino is not a race. It has been twisted to fit a culture of people who were invaded by the Spanish and the Portuguese. That is the Latin. That is the Hispanic tie. And that's the only goddamn tie-in. They were the Caribbean, Central South, and even parts of North America that were invaded by these Portuguese and Spanish. They came through, they conquered, they R-worded and pillaged. And as the results of those R-words, you had certain portions of the population that were appearing lighter than others. That should be common sense. I don't care if you talk about the Taino, the Arawak, the Aztecs, the Mayans. No matter where you go, no matter where you cut or slice this thing, the indigenous people were darker than me. Which is why in 2025, your average person from Puerto Rico, from Cuba, even, half the people you see on, Univision, Telemundo, they have that nice golden tone, not too far from mine, but just a little bit lighter. Some will look almost Caucasian totally. But when you go away from the cameras and you go off into the countrysides of all of the following countries named, because I've been to a lot of them, off into the countryside, not even far, a little 20, 30-minute ride from whatever little capital. And once again, the people that we eating with, kicking it with, buying goods from, are going to 9 out of 10 times be darker than me. So to go back to the comment left by Immaculate Vessel, Hispanics are not white people. Hispanics, people who identify, who call themselves Hispanics, or people who have been called or labeled by their governments as Hispanic, Latino, are in the same boat as, black people in North America. We've been labeled Negro, colored, black, etc., etc. So all of that to say, Latino and Hispanic aren't races. Black and white, at least from an American perspective, are races. If you want to be super scientific, Caucasoid, Negroid. Right? For some of y'all who, done read up and probably smarter than me. I'm just a nigga who read, you know what I'm saying? But you know what a Negro is. You walk down the street, you're gonna probably cross over the other side. All right. So let's get that shit clear. Now, in this article, they go back and they say it again. Latino is an ethnicity, not a race. And the purpose of them doing this particular article, which is the Latino Policy and Politics Institute, you see Shorty with her curly hair. It looks like she's trying to bring awareness and elevate Afro Latin representation. So for all of those who get shit fucked up out here, let's not pretend that within the Latin community that there's not colorism and racism on how, once again, the Hispanics / Latinos who identify as white practice white supremacy racism against their darker peers. That's an actual fact. I've heard it out of the mouths of plenty of Latinos. I've seen it online. I've watched the videos. And clearly, this study done by these Latinos at UCLA, to run it back for you in case you didn't get it that first time, the Latino Policy and Politics Institute, they understand this very thing that I'm touching on, which is why they making these points. So now they go so far as to even give you the history of which I gave you guys in a similar video called the Naturalization Act of 1790. And sure enough, what do they reference? They reference that the United States conducted its first census in 1790. So what are the results of that census and how it affected everything going forward? At that time, there was only 3 categories coming to the United States or the colonies: free white, slave, and all other free persons. So now to give into a little history that might make y'all feel uncomfortable, the ones who don't know the real history, the ones who saying that Hispanics are not white. I'm not saying that they all are white. I'm saying that some are white and some are not. All right. That's the first statement that I stand on and will never backpedal from ever because it's a fact. So let's go on into it. Basically, the inclusion of Hispanic and Latino populations in the census remained a challenge for the OMB. So, whatever that is, clearly it's some Census Bureau office. But anyway, it goes to say the census first began collecting separate data on Mexicans as a racial category in 1930, but dropped the category in the 1940 census, noting that Mexicans are to be regarded as white unless definitely of Indian or other non-white race. So that's step one. And I think you all understand that. I think you all know how to read. And throughout the history of the United States, various people that we now consider Hispanic slash Latino have been off and on throughout the generations brought into the country as either under the designation of where they came. They might have been brought in literally as a Cuban or a Puerto Rican or a Mexican. Then maybe it's from the 1850s, then maybe the 1880s, they admit the next wave in as white. Then you jump to the 1910s, then it's back to Puerto Rican, Cuban, Mexican, etc., etc. Now, in this next part here, it says that this decision to categorize Mexicans broadly as white was due to the advocacy of the League of the United Latin American Citizens, known as LULAC, which argued that Mexicans were a white race. They didn't ask. They fought and made it crystal clear to the whites that no, we want in. We do not want to be treated as Mexicans. We want to be treated as white. Matter of fact, we are white. And why would they be staking these claims so boldly unless the shit that I just fucking dropped on y'all head over the generations, looking at different census records over the decades, you will see that what I'm saying is actually fact. Those earlier waves of Cubans, Mexicans, etc., that were brought into the country under the classification as white, they were like, fuck it, man, we white. You know what I mean? You have to think about this shit logically. Fuck culturally, because a lot of them still gonna practice their culture at the crib, but you come into America where everything is about race, and you go from being in the middle where they had signs literally saying no Mexicans or dogs allowed, and you have to choose between I'm in this racist ass country, even though there's plenty of new opportunities here. Do I want to be treated as a Mexican, or do I want to be treated as white, where I have full rights and status and all of that? Come on, man. Use your fucking brain. That's why the motherfuckers said at LULAC, we are a white race. And then they held that shit down because the word Latino didn't pop up on the census again until goddamn 1970. So stop playing these games with me, niggas. I'm on y'all ass. Do not fucking play with me. Boy, on to the next shit. Stop it. You got a certain faction of people categorized as Hispanic Latino that are proud of their indigenous heritage. Let me make that crystal clear. Growing up in New York, around Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, etc., I know motherfuckers that love not only their country, but know the real history and cherish that shit and appreciate it and understand it. Then I've been around motherfuckers from them same countries that when they get here, their parents might be the first group of people I'm talking about, but the younger generation, they trying to blend as far and as close to white society as they can. And they appreciate the Spanish side of their heritage and culture more so than their indigenous. And that's a fucking fact. Mentally and genetically. So now let's go to the last pieces of the puzzle here, which when you go and apply for a job, and if you getting money, especially in corporate America, then you know what I'm talking about. Even if you ain't Hispanic, if you white and if you just black, you've seen this shit on 1,000 job applications. When it gets into who's who and what's what, it's going to ask you a lot of times, are you Hispanic or Latino? Yes or no? Then it'll go a step further and say, are you Hispanic non-white or are you Hispanic white? And then for the people, I'm playing devil's advocate because I know you know. But for those who act dumb like they don't know or maybe never applied for a job yet, there's going to be a classification or a designation Hispanic non-white and Hispanic white, which basically implies you are more in alignment with the European side of your heritage. The Hispanic non-white, checking that box, it implies you are in touch with not only and from a self-identification standpoint, but even from a racial genetic standpoint. I identify more as indigenous, or I identify more as Afro-Cuban, Afro-Latina, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, stop playing these games. So back to the final piece here. Hispanics are not white people. Technically, Hispanics are no different than anywhere that Caucasians have came through, or worded and pillaged. You're going to have factions of those populations that are still pure blood of the original peoples that were there. You're going to have another segment that are basically a mixture or mulatto, which is the term used by the government in these documents, or mestiza or mestizo, depending on where you're at. So you're either pure white, you're pure black, you're pure indigenous, or you're a mixture. In a lot of these Latin countries, the majority, well, not the majority, but there's a very large sections of all of those areas population that in appearance have the mulatto appearance. Some will look almost Caucasian all the way. Some are going to be darker than me, like I just touched on. If you're Latino, you already know this. If you're not Latino, you've learned something new. Matter of fact, go on vacation this summer. It's getting hot out there. Take you a nice trip somewhere. Or matter of fact, wait until like November when it cool off up here, and then it'll be just right to go anywhere down there. And you can see for yourself. So the Latino, Hispanic are cultural identifiers. They're not genetic. You feel me? So, in a nutshell, you can be white and be Latin. You can be black and be Latin. You can be indigenous and be Latin. Because once again, it was the colonizers who invaded these indigenous lands and forced these additional ways of life upon the indigenous ways that were already in existence. And in a lot of cases, these cultures are a combination of the two that have blended together. You know what I mean? It's no different. Like I say, most likely in a lot of cases, everywhere that the Caucasian has went and invaded. So now that we got the understanding of what is an ethnicity versus what is race, and why even the government understands, because they ask you to identify your ethnicity and your race. This form, let me scoot it up for you: ethnicity and race identification. So hopefully y'all got that lesson. Somebody could be black, or they get, or African descent. That's the race part of it. The ethnicity is, I'm Jamaican, or I'm Haitian, or you know what I mean, I'm an American. That's all. That's it. A lot of times people be thinking that these other terms are all whole separate races. No, they not. But we'll wrap this thing up, and I'll holla at y'all.